too. How am I a part of this? You'll see.
How's it going, Bat family? Welcome to another installment in the Batman 2022 series. If you're brand new here, what we do is we come together as a fandom, we generate the hype through talking about all kinds of things that could be appearing in the movie, from certain theories, certain things that we want to see happen. Do I think it could happen? From certain insights that we now have from leaks in the trailer itself. That's what it is. I mean, I still have some people saying, well, you don't really know. That's the whole point of this series. It's literally, I'm not pretending to be an omniscient the Batman sneaking onto set. Oh, I know what happens in that scene. But this is what it's all about. The experience and really just sharing our love together for this upcoming movie. And then when it comes to seeing it, we can like look back at these videos and see what we all kind of thought about our previous thoughts. And also, everybody, I regret to announce and inform you that the Batman was supposed to be releasing today, on its original release date, that is. And yeah, so here's a Batman video, I suppose. That's one of the main motivators for me getting it out today, because yeah, it was kind of meant to drop today. So at least here's some Bat content. I hope you enjoyed the intro as well. I thought, hey, I kind of got a similar desk set up here, so let's try and do a little piss take parody of that ending scene in the trailer. But before I ramble too much more, guys, go ahead and like this video if you do go on to enjoy. Got some very interesting topics to get into today that you guys have asked about. I really can't wait to get this started. And just subscribe, because a lot of you, I want to say this, aren't subscribed to the channel. I think around over 60% of you who watch these videos aren't actually subscribed. Whether you don't have a YouTube account or you just keep typing my name in to come back to the videos, hey, maybe today is the day you hit that little red subscribe button. But let's get into question number one from Billy. I could barely see the name there, but I'm just going to say Billy. So to build on James's suggestion, and very quick recap, if you didn't see last Friday's video, there was this really interesting comment that I had never really considered before. And it might not happen, it really just might not, but it's something that could be quite innovatively fascinating to put on the new established adaptation that Matt Reeves is doing here. So long story short, James wondered what if Bruce hasn't actually publicly appeared in Gotham until around the events of the movie. You can link in certain lines from this, from Alfred saying you're becoming quite the celebrity. You could argue that is because Batman's getting a lot of press, but then again, is it really about Batman, that comment from Alfred? Because he's been here for the past year and a half, so maybe he was on about the Bruce Wayne side. Bruce Wayne's becoming quite the celebrity, because what if, as of around the events of the movie, that's when he decided to come out as Bruce Wayne in the public. Now, at first, I would have just, if I saw that on paper, I would have been like, nah. But at the same time, to explore a Batman who returned back to Gotham. So Bruce Wayne returned back to Gotham 1 year, 6 months ago, but decided to be Batman and just kind of in the cave the whole time for that 1 year and 6 months. And then to present himself as Bruce Wayne, that would be really, really interesting. But then to present himself out in public after a year and a half as Bruce Wayne would be really, really fascinating. And as Billy goes on to say here, to build on James's suggestion, that could actually be a perfect way for Matt to have Bruce avoid the same old generic question of, well, wouldn't people realize Batman's starting to appear around the exact same time as Bruce returned to Gotham? Exactly. This movie heavily focuses on Bruce's detective and intellectual skills, so maybe he deliberately hides his public return for a year plus, while starting his crusade as Batman to avoid the public putting two and two together. So yeah, this isn't so much a question, just kind of like an expansion on one of the questions from last video. So even if you didn't watch that, maybe you're kind of up to date now through me kind of giving you a bit of a lowdown of what James originally said. But yeah, what do you guys think of that? I would love some more discussion on this down in the comments, because even though, let's just say it might likely not happen, how cool would that actually be? Because I would believe a Matt Reeves version of Bruce being in the cave all the time, doing this criminological experiment, and then, yeah, eventually a year and a half in, this is year 2, Matt Reeves said it's 1 year, 6 months in, and that's when he's like, okay, I'm going to come out in the public now, and that would pertain to the line of Alfred saying that you're becoming quite the celebrity, because, well, only now people just realize that Bruce has returned back to Gotham, all while not knowing Alfred has been delivering him dinner in the Batcave and showering down there freaking every night for the past year and a half, which Bruce could have easily achieved going incognito back to Gotham and only appearing to the public a year and 6 months in. I feel like we could be on something there. That's actually really sweet. Even if it doesn't happen, I hope this happens someday in some way, in some adaptation. Whether it's cartoon or live action, I think Bruce coming back a year and a half and dedicating himself to the first days of hardcore criminological experiment style stuff, that's brilliant. It really is. And as Billy suggests here, it kind of also makes you think, Batman's bit was here before Bruce Wayne, so they're not the same, like, you know, rather than Batman and Bruce coming at the same time. But I've been rambling enough. On to question 2, even though that wasn't really a question. So Matthew Smith asks, I personally think each movie should have a villain or villains that test Batman in unique ways. So the Batman, Mind, Body, and Soul trilogy. This first movie has the Riddler that will test Batman's mind, intelligence, and his abilities as a detective. The next movie could feature either Bane or Deathstroke along with Two-Face to test his body, his resolve, and his combat ability. And the third film would face Batman off against the Joker to test his soul, his moral code, and his own sanity. Now, once again, not so much a question kind of thing, but it's something I wanted to read out anyway, because I feel like Matt Reeves, as he said himself, obviously he has an arc and ideas for a trilogy, but you just have to start number 1 to begin with, and I feel like that would be what you would lay the groundwork of your kind of, you know, future ideas for a trilogy to be. And I'm not saying you've completely hit it on the nail on the head, because who knows what Matt Reeves has got planned in his little journal or whatever, but that would be a brilliant way to explore it. And you have to think, attempting to do an arc or a trilogy with any Dark Knight adaptation, it would be something along these lines, because that's something I've spoken about for quite some time now. This first movie is very noir detective, point of view driven, and, you know, reiterating detective again, because Matt Reeves, as he said, it hasn't really been capitalized upon too much before. I mean, it has, but, like, not like the world's greatest detective Batman. I mean, think about it, such a huge thing. He's meant to be the world's greatest detective. Have we really seen that? No, we haven't properly, and that is going to be perfect for the Riddler. But are we really going to get the world's greatest detective for every movie? Now, I'm not saying I'm complaining about that, but I don't know if we will, and that's something we really need to consider. I'm not saying that, oh, the Batman with the Riddler, the first movie, the first installment in the trilogy, it's going to be noir detective driven, and then it's just going to go out the window and it's going to be something else. I'm not saying they're going to get rid of it, but I'm just saying in the second and third movie, like Matthew Smith is pointing out here, it might capitalize more on another aspect rather than the world's greatest detective like the first movie did, and, you know, solidified in that brickwork. But the second movie, that's going to solidify something else. And as you've said here, first has the Riddler testing Batman's mind and intelligence, but the next movie could feature Bane or Deathstroke along with Two-Face to test his body, resolve, and his combat ability, and then, yeah, perfectly the Joker, and that would be in like 4+ years time, and we're going to get on some more Joker comments in a second to test his soul, moral code, and sanity. I completely agree with that. I'm not saying that's going to be the exact same way it goes down, but I do think that Matt Reeves, all while including the detective operative kind of stuff that Robert Pattinson's Batman's going to capitalize upon in the first movie, that should be carried throughout the rest, but he should definitely capitalize upon a different part of the Dark Knight's brilliance, everything that kind of builds up the persona of the Batman, and I think he is going to do that. John asks, I'm a big fan of your stuff. Thank you, John. Question, what do you think of the guy in the green suit not being the Riddler, but actually his goon he sends out to do his murders? Since Riddler is smart, not masculine, the rumor about Batman fails, so halfway through the movie he could catch the goon thinking it's Riddler. That could be a good way to show that the Riddler could outsmart Batman sometimes, but Batman catches him at the end. Once again, what I love about doing this series and why I continue it, as much as as you can imagine, go through this movie a billion times in my head, and I feel like, you know, the capacity has almost been reached for how much I've really pondered it, but there's stuff like this, and just like the James kind of, oh, Bruce Wayne not coming to Gotham, or publicly revealing himself for a year and a half. There are just some ideas that I can't even pop into my head, I feel, and I love seeing them in this, and then just sharing it with everyone, and then us all, you know, talking about it together. So I don't think I've considered this one before, but I don't know how I feel about it. So, what do I think of the guy in the green suit not being the Riddler? So, the part in the trailer where he's taping up the mayor's face. I think it is. But I do really like the idea of Riddler sending out a goon, kind of like a fake-out situation where the Batman, at some point in the movie, does indeed think that he's caught him. But just as we've seen the Riddler's goons on set photos wearing similar kind of green jackets, and just similar kind of get-ups because it's his gang or whatever, or people who just follow him, it wouldn't surprise me if the Batman gets right up close and then it's just like a civilian. Kind of like, you know, in A Dark Knight when just right at the end he goes in and there's the civilians in the Joker masks. I can imagine something like that at some point, but I do think the Riddler will be murdering himself. I don't think he would trust a job, even though, yes, I think with what you mean by saying he's not so masculine, he's maybe not so hands-on, if that's what you meant by saying that. Yes and no. I know what you're trying to say there, definitely. I think in the comic books he would be kind of a bit more sending out people, but in this, I feel like I'm rambling at this point. It could happen, but it might not happen. I think it will happen in one way. At some point, as I said, Batman might think that he's caught the Riddler. But as for the actual murders or the scenes that we actually saw in the trailer, I do think that in a very Zodiac Killer kind of way, the serial killer of the Riddler, albeit that he's got a much more grander kind of mission than just to simply serial kill people, he will be doing that himself. But I do expect a switcheroo situation a couple of times where Batman gets infuriated because maybe he was this close to maybe capturing this mysterious Riddler. Alexander Smith says, I hope Falcone doesn't get killed by Penguin. I hope his death has actual meaning like in A Long Halloween and Gotham instead of him just kind of going down in a really lame way like in Batman Begins. So, I know what you mean, and I guess this comes off, yeah, what we were talking about in last week's video. I was saying how, you know, Penguin will probably have a rise in the first movie. He's likely not necessarily working for Falcone, but maybe, like, it's one of those things where all of the business and all of the gangs and mobs of Gotham have to do business through the top crime family, and that is the Falcone like, every other business or shady business or gang has to do business through him. And maybe Penguin, or maybe he is a part of his operation, just like everyone else has to go through Falcone, but at some point, maybe because of whatever happens, that is eventually how Oz becomes Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, and he'll eventually like being called the Penguin because Matt Reeves has teased us with how he hates being called the Penguin at the beginning. But yeah, I do agree that would indicate that Falcone has to die in the first movie, which might not actually happen. This could happen in the second movie. The whole first movie, when I've been speculating about this stuff, let's just say he doesn't die. We might just see Oswald's scheme, which is very Cobblepot and Penguin-like throughout the whole movie, for that to happen in the second movie. And the second movie, kind of like what we were speculating about last week, let's just say he is poised up to be the main antagonist, but I still expect other characters still to be around there. The actual squash of Falcone could be in the second movie, and the whole first movie is kind of this slithering kind of setup in the background for Falcone's downfall. But yeah, like, that's up to, there's a billion different ways this can go, but I think it's inevitable that Oswald will have a rise to power, and that will be because of the vacuum that's left behind through Falcone going out in some way, shape, or form. But I do agree. I hope that it's not just like, oh look, here's Falcone, and then like, oh, he just dies somehow, and this means Oswald can rise up. It has to be, I want some, and I think all fans want some Falcone justice. Not that we haven't got it in Slithers before, but we need to see Falcone be Falcone. Like, he is huge, but I feel like we haven't actually had too much justice of him in live action before, at least not to the full capacity, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people are on about here, and I think we will get it with what Reeves is giving us. And yeah, maybe if he doesn't die in the first movie, we will get a lot of justice given to him, but a lot of setup for his downfall, and then maybe that happens in the second. Or maybe they might save it for even longer. So SJ Ween, do you think we are getting a second version or upgrade for the Batmobile, or is Bruce staying with this version? I think it's inevitable the Batmobile will get upgraded over the span of the trilogy, but I don't think it will deviate too much from what he's getting or what he has accomplished right now. It's a very interesting question. I think even in the trailer, I'm not sure if that is the Batmobile that he rides in the background at that end kind of scene. You know, the scene I did the parody of at the beginning of this video. It could just be mounted up there, or that could be like another kind of chassis, if you will, for another one that he's working on. I expect, like, Bruce, just like he has multiple bikes, to have kind of backups. I don't know if he has like proper backups of the Batmobile, but at least like engines, spare engines, because he's tried to make make this current one bulletproof, but there's still quite a bit exposed that I think could get messed up, and he's gonna have to have, you know, like in F1, they have to like quickly swap over the wheels. I feel like he's got quite a few things lined up just in case things go wrong, but it's inevitable that we will get upgrades for sure. I just don't think, unlike a lot of people are thinking, that this first movie will, you know, somehow upgrade the suit, the Batmobile, this and that. I don't think that will be the case. I think we will see that in a subtle way because there's lots going on in that Batcave. But as for the suit and the Batmobile itself, I do expect it to remain largely, if not entirely, the same for this first movie, with little teases of what's to come in the second and third. Possible prototypes, that is. Dan XP asks, hey Boba, love these kind of videos. Thank you very much, Dan. I'm glad that you do. I wanted to ask, do you think that there is a possibility that Reeves introduces Hugo Strange to have him as one of the main villains in either second or third film? I would love Hugo Strange as a live-action villain, just as he was in the Arkham City game. So yeah, with this kind of question, it's really hard, because it's like, Matt Reeves could choose any. Like, imagine having all of these cards, like trading cards, and you can pick whatever one you want for the next 3 movies. So it's really hard to decipher what he plans to do. You can get an idea and your intuition, like what I try and gauge through vibing the same vision that Reeves is giving us and seeing the clear inspirations, then the listed inspirations that he's detailed, like Darwin Cook's Batman Ego that I rave on about and stuff. You can get an idea of where he's going, but like, it's still very hard to, you know, with the amount of rogues gallery and popular villains that he has, Batman that is, to choose who's going to be in the trilogy, or how one villain in the second movie, like Penguin, for example, might be poised up to be the main antagonist, but you're still going to get, like, little pocket characters that I expect to kind of build up the flavor and the world building that he's delivering us with this Gotham City. So, Hugo Strange would be an excellent one. I do agree. It's just, I know whatever we say, let's just say, okay, like Hugo Strange, there's going to be another fan who would say, yeah, but I really want to see a new take and a good take on Mr. Freeze, and then another fan will say, oh yeah, but as much as I appreciate Hugo Strange, maybe Mr. Freeze, but I feel like we should get Harvey Dent, and even though we had Harvey Dent before in Nolan's, I feel like that could span a couple of films. You know how, for example, Harvey could be trying to help put away the Penguin in the second movie, but only become like Two-Face in the third movie, so it spans a lot longer. This is what I mean about subtly fleshing out other characters in the background, even though there's a main villain in the second movie. You still have these other ones that arcs are going to come to full fruition in a longer kind of approach, such as, you know, from the second to the third film. So, yeah, I don't know. I would love to see Hugo Strange as well, but it depends. I feel like I want to leave that a few years in between the films, depending how much time they're going to do between the films and stuff like that. But I would love to know everyone's thoughts on Hugo Strange adaptation in the Batman Trilogy. So Speedy Bricks asks, could you see this movie being PG-13 but having an R-rated director's cut like Zack Snyder had for BVS? PG-13 would obviously be much more marketable and available to kids than just strictly adults. But if Matt Reeves wanted an even darker version of the film to release, could it be in the form of a director's cut? So this is something we've discussed before, but not in this kind of, with this kind of lens on it. So I've said that this film, I think the idea was, and is and could be R-rated, but we've discussed before that obviously that means it's not as marketable. Like, there are certain parents out there, this will never change, and understandably so. I'm not parenting or giving parent advice, whatever, but you might not want to have your kids see a Batman who beats somebody into a coma and that much blood be on screen or whatever. And that's not me saying it's like a pool of blood, but you know, sometimes one little thing over the line will bump something up from, like, as you say, a PG-13 to an R rating. So in this case, and I do believe that Matt Reeves will completely have his vision, but I do feel like Warner Brothers, the most interference they will possibly do ever will be like, are you sure you don't want to make it a PG-13 kind of thing? That will be to the extent of it, and that might be where it's considered, okay, yeah, you know what, I feel like we can get away with a lot, but I will do an R-rated cut as well. And that's kind of what you're saying here. I agree. But I do feel like Warner Brothers, you know, as much as I'm defending this film, and even the studio to an extent of how they're not going to mess with this through the evidence that I've done in whole videos saying stop believe the rumors. I've got literally an audio recording of Matt Reeves saying he's going to do the Batman and only do the Batman if it's his vision. Like, literal recordings of him saying that. So that's why I believe he has his full vision. And I also want to defend them in terms of like this R rating, or they don't like how dark it is, and I've gone over and defended those rumors because, well, look at how successful Joker was. That was insanely, if not more dark than what even the Batman could be with this first film. Do you know what I'm trying to say there? So, like, I don't think, you know, this Batman, especially it being in a pocket little universe, and then the DCU doing its own thing going forwards with Affleck and / Keaton in the Flash movie, that they even care about if it's that dark. So don't believe those rumors. I know I've kind of gone into a bit of a tangent now, but yeah, I can't call it 100%. I'm saying it really wouldn't surprise me if it is R-rated. That would be very interesting, but I do think they will completely keep going this way and that way with, should it be PG-13? We can still, like, make the movie look almost exact same, but, like, maybe we should make it R-rated, but PG could get, like, a lot more people coming in the theater doors. So do you know what I mean? I feel like that we're going to be playing with that a little bit, but no matter what, I think Matt Reeves will really, really be pushing the mark to make it as dark as possible in terms of maintaining the vision that we got out of that trailer, maintaining the stuff that we've heard through the grapevine. It's just, will it or won't it be the bleeding edge line of PG-13 to R-rated? And if it is PG-13, back to your original question, I 100% do believe that there will be a darker cut, but the question I'm looking for is, will it be R-rated to begin with? Now, I know there's lots of debate about that, but through the grapevine, I have heard that it is very R-rated. But that is something that I think is always subject to change through, like, the cutting room floor. Like, that doesn't mean a scene will look completely different. You know, you know what an R-rated version of a film, a director's cut looks like. It's still the same movie at points, but even the same scene might just have, like, differences, slight differences that add that little notch up of severity to suit the tone of the film. So, yeah, I can ramble about this forever, but we don't know truly until we know. So Ryan Clark asks, what up, Boba? Love the videos and that you're keeping the hype alive. Me too, my friend. I have read that this film is heavily inspired by the Earth 1 Batman comics and will follow the storyline that Alfred, who is prior British military, is responsible for training Bruce himself. I personally loved the Earth 1 iteration of Batman and Alfred, and it fits with what we have heard about their relationship. What are your thoughts? 100% agree. Now, I think a lot of people are getting confused through other content creators saying, like, the sole inspiration for this movie is Earth 1. That's not the case. Like, Reeves has said himself, you know, like, multiple inspirations. Darwin Cook's Ego, Long Halloweeny with the mysterious killer who isn't Holiday but is the Riddler, and obviously Year One, but not quite adapting the story beat for beat, but also Batman Earth 1, obviously. Now, this is very much so what you're pointing out here, something that I'm finding very, very fascinating. I do 100% agree with what I've said before about Alfred being, well, you're saying here, the prior, you know, military experience, that's like every Alfred really, but like, you know, it's being capitalized upon even more in these days, like showing that kind of younger Alfred, whether that's through Pennyworth, the Gotham TV series, they're not as kind of like Michael Caine frail, if you know what I mean, which, you know, we love that approach, but like, I'm ready for the Andy Serkis kind of more older brother, uncle, but parental vibe. Like, Bruce will listen to him, and when he's been growing up, I'm sure there's that disciplinary, like, okay, I won't F with you kind of thing, but he might, I still expect that kind of challenging relationship between each other that they might have, that could even end up in arguments and stuff. That I would love to see that explored throughout the movie, the care that Andy Serkis' younger type 50s Alfred will have over this early 30s Bruce Wayne, but like how they were, yeah, I love that. I love it so much. Honestly, I see it in my head so much. But with what you're saying here is, I don't know if I want that. So in Batman Earth 1, as you're pointing out here, he was responsible for training Bruce himself. Now, I would love that in many ways. I would think that would be a great starting point. I wouldn't really complain if that was it. I think a lot of people would, like comic purists, but even though that kind of is pure to that adaptation. But I would like for Bruce Wayne to kind of go away and get trained in multiple different cultures and stuff. It doesn't have to be as extreme in the comics. Like, we're talking like insane levels of pushing human to the edge type. Like, I know some people will disagree with me there. I'm for it, but I'm also like, I can let a lot of that severity slide. But to just be trained by Alfred, whilst I would still dig that, because that could be done over years and years. You can really, like, proper, like, you know, hand-to-hand combat, like, special forces Alfred training type, you know, his backstory. That would instill a level of competency, if that's the right word, for Bruce to have during combat, but also allows some noobiness for him to get like shot here, and you know, he's ever improving, but he's got the foundations through SAS type training through Alfred. Now, I know I'm kind of rambling again at this point, but I'm kind of indecisive. I would like that. I wouldn't mind if it's mainly that, and he also went around and experienced a few different type of sensei kind of things, but to just be trained by Alfred, I think I'd be like, I want a little bit more, but I would still be fine with it at the end of the day, because it kind of still adds even more into Reeves's vision. That's kind of what you're capitalizing upon here in your comment. Like, it does actually really fit the vibe that Reeves has given us for this. Like, he's so far from perfect. His ability to endure is his main superhero strength, power, if you will, because Batman technically isn't a superhero. And obviously to have the combat, I don't want to say limitations, but prowess of, yeah, like Jesus, like Alfred and his military past, he is a very, very capable and trained person. Like they don't like take it easy on guys like that when they're being trained for the special forces that Alfred has been in. So to pass that on to Bruce over years, I'm talking years, would make him more than competent to take on a freaking street thug. I think we can all agree with that. I just think if they did this, there would be understandable controversy between fans of like, that's not like, I wanted to see him do this, and like amongst many trainers. So yeah, I would love it as well. It would fit in also just with the casting. Like, Andy Serkis is younger, he is more hands-on. I think he is helping Bruce. He's reluctant in a way, but he's not going to deny him in his kind of crusade, if you will. I think he will come around to accepting the crusade. But yeah, now, you know, another comment where I didn't properly take this into account before. I'm now reckoning with the fact that what if Alfred, this younger kind of more hands-on Alfred, who isn't proper, like, you know, proper butler type. He is the caring butler, but like, he will probably be a little less Michael Caine-y butler than what we've seen before, and more hands-on. It does make sense, but I'm just wondering now, and I would love to know your thoughts. Would you be cool with that? Or would you kind of like a little bit more like me, but you wouldn't complain if it is just Alfred, because you can see how that leads to the Robert Pattinson Bruce Wayne who's jumping out of rooftops of Gotham that we've seen in this trailer? It really does fit the vibe that we have for him. But would you like a little bit more training, or would you be absolutely fine with multiple years of hardcore ex-military special forces Alfred training passed on to Bruce Wayne, which I think would also make sense. I mean, for crying out loud, Batman Earth 1 is a perfect starting point to see how that does work, but also he's got a long way to go. Like, he forever improves, obviously, but at the beginning, that makes you a bit of a nub. A newbie nub. So Vincent asks, how do I think that the Wayne terminal Bruce uses as the Batcave connects to Wayne Manor? It will apparently be in Gotham City itself in the film too. Are you talking about Wayne Manor or the cave being in Gotham City itself? So well, let's just explore both those options, because I kind of agree with that. So the Wayne terminal is like these abandoned kind of, you know, and it really, it's beautiful, really. I feel like the kind of train subway thing that's abandoned there, whether because of a previous flooding that he has kind of since gone in, the rest of Gotham City have completely written that off. Oh, it's unstable, it's got all kind of foundational breaches because of the flood, like we can't possibly, but Bruce has gone in there and kind of drained it a bit, like, but you can still see drips. There's bats who have congregated, like, in the city. It's perfect, but also it's even more perfect because the Wayne terminus or terminal that we can make out with the clock being there is probably linked, and it can use and operate the Batmobile to go from one subway location to all kinds of areas around the city. Now, it could also completely connect to a place that Bruce has within Gotham City. So you're saying, well, Wayne Manor, it apparently be in Gotham City itself too. If Wayne Manor is, that makes it even more brilliant, because I know lots of people love Wayne Manor being outside, but I wouldn't mind in this adaptation, shall we say, if Bruce is always looking out over Gotham, so to speak, in a kind of Wayne Enterprises kind of way, because he's already there. So, like, figuratively, he lives there, like, literally, but also Batman is forever looking out, but you can kind of go down into the abandoned subway and get around Gotham very quickly through abandoned subway terminals. So when you say, how do I think the Wayne terminal Bruce uses as the Batcave connects to Wayne Manor, like, obviously, it could go to Wayne Manor, like outside the city if he has another place there. But ultimately, I think it will directly connect up to wherever he is staying. I think there could be a situation like Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne where there is a manor, but he could have another place in the city where he's staying. But furthermore, that beautiful literal use, just like how everything has a use, a literal use, a practical use on the suit. Everything in this city does that Batman has planned to a T in of itself just completely is relevant to the bigger picture. So the Batcave connecting A, B, C, D. Now, I can guess that some people might get nitpicky about that saying, but really, why don't people look into more of this abandoned? I think it must be a disaster or a flooding that really did. All kinds of structural engineers and people like that completely wrote that off. It's so abandoned, like, because it's beyond repair kind of thing. But that is the perfect place for Bruce Wayne, and especially as like he's at the Wayne terminal, kind of the Wayne part, because obviously they probably used their family money from decades back, from when Thomas and Martha Wayne were still kind of running the show. They probably poured a lot of money into that project. And it's going to be interesting to see what even caused that flooding. Like, what was the event? And will that be relevant to the state that Gotham City is in today? Like, why were these subways not actually successful? I mean, you can see the multiple tracks. You can see the tracks, like, here at the beginning bit where he kind of rides in on the bike. But then you can see, like, the back bit, you know, the multiple kind of terminal location-y bits. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that it probably will connect to where he's staying, because I like how he can get down there quick. I think that's important for Batman. Secondly, I think it has a link to every part in the city, or at least a lot of places. That would be very useful for him to also get in and out of situations. Like, if he knows there's another entrance to the abandoned subways that will connect to his Wayne Terminus subway through that other abandoned entrance of a subway, let's just say he's at this quadrant of the Narrows in Gotham City, he can make an escape down into there and then pop up into Wayne Terminus or Terminal over here, because he knows it like the back of his hand. But everyone else doesn't think of that because it's completely beyond their thoughts. Like, that's completely abandoned, and why would you use that? It's just dangerous. Like, it's written off, and that is the beauty of what we're going to see with this movie. Now, Abra asks, do I think that Red Hood could make an appearance later on in the trilogy, or in like a fourth movie beyond, hopefully? I feel as though Red Hood is severely underused character antagonist when it comes to Batman's rogues or family gallery. He could turn out to be a very popular character with an emotional and complex storyline, in my opinion. Honestly, like, it's cool as I understand that people want this, and, you know, just in case anyone isn't aware, that they are doing a Death in the Family kind of Jason Todd Red Hood storyline on Titans this year. Like, he's getting crowbarred and everything. I do get it. I do, in how cool that would be to see Robert Pattinson go through that. But, like, the thing is, if they're going to do a Robin at all, I think Reeves will stick to Dick Grayson. The first one, I don't think we're going to get Red Hood. How do I know that? I don't. But, like, I'm telling you, I vibe that they're not going to do the Jason Todd thing. I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to evaluate that news as of when that's official, if it ever does become that way. But I'm gauging that Matt Reeves will go for the first Robin, if at all, during the trilogy, if they're to touch upon a Robin. And the whole Death in the Family thing, I just don't think they're going to bench Grayson to bring him forward to bring Jason forward first, and then do that Red Hood storyline. And then I know how you can link that into like a Joker appearance later on in the trilogy. And that would be a good story for that, but I don't know. I just don't feel like they would do that with that character. I feel like they're going to do Dick Grayson, but that's just me. Kind of going along the lines of Joker or just Red Hood there, Zafir Nauman asks, love the content, thank you buddy, but I don't want to see Joker for some time. He's a card played a lot, and I want the movies to focus on other villains. Other villains just don't seem to be as worked upon. Everyone puts all the effort into Joker, so I'm hoping for Mr. Freeze or any chance of that. So I wanted to address that first. Like, don't forget, guys, that if we get Joker, like, if at all in the first movie, it'll be very minimalistic. It'll be more world building, if anything, to help tease and begin that arc for him to, let's just say, appear in the third movie. Now, think about it. We're not getting the Batman until 2022. The last proper Joker thing we got was Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. So I get how people would kind of joke it out for a little bit or whatever, or if you could say the Snyder Jared Leto scene at the very end. But other than that, if we did Joker in the third movie, got the proper Joker movie with Robert Pattinson's Batman, that is years away. And I think that fatigue, I think a lot of people aren't having this foresight that they will be ready for another Joker on the screen by then. Because we got the second movie, or the couple of years until then, like, that's not until at least 2024, the fall of that year. And then for the third movie, you can add another couple of years onto that, 2026, and if there's delays or whatever, like, that's a... Okay, so now picture no Joker until, like, let's just say 2026. you will be ready for a Pattinson Batman Joker by that point. I'm telling you. So I'm game for Joker. I just don't think he's going to be heavily used in the first couple of movies. But I think we will get him in some shape or form. And I don't mind him being very, like, if Bruce has to go to Arkham to talk to this John Doe because they don't have that Joker-Batman relationship yet, but like he could still go meet this proto-Joker. And when I say proto-Joker, he is the Joker, but as I keep mentioning in my recent videos, it might be more along the type of like Arkham Origins where Joker's out there, Batman saves him, and then that's when he becomes fascinated with him because he's like, why would this guy save me? But like he was out there and they kind of knew of him kind of thing, so it might be that kind of thing that's only very sparingly used for a scene to set up, oh, that this guy will be appearing in the third movie, but that's like, what, 3 or 4 and a bit years away. So I'm completely down for Joker. So don't worry, that won't, I don't think, bench other villains that you want to see. A big popular one, as you're pointing out here, is Mr. Freeze. There is, of course, a chance of that happening. And also, Batman says, I'm vengeance. Who could he be avenging? Gangs? Kill Alfred? No. The vengeance thing is like personifying, I'm vengeance. I am like the retribution of everything that is bad in Gotham, and I'm righting those wrongs of the criminal underworld, the frickin' mob, I am vengeance. That's not specifically saying I'm seeking vengeance for the death of Alfred, like you were kind of saying unlikely, but oh, what if it's to do that? No. It's meant to be more symbolic, like Batman is vengeance. He is the knight, he is Batman, he is symbol of hope and kind of fear to put in the heart of criminals. Like, we all know this already. Don't read too much into the vengeance thing. That's just him. He is the right of all wrongs in Gotham, is the way I could put it. But as we say, what are the drops? Now, I forget, like, I always expect people to know this already, so I mentioned this in the last video, but a few people said, what are the drops? So, on the set of the Batman, and maybe I'm showing it on screen right now, but there was literal ads from the Gotham Health Department, where there was ads for the mayoral candidates, but there was also a Gotham Health Department crisis saying, are you addicted to the drops or whatever, call us on the Gotham Health Department. And it had like a little logo of like a scarecrowy-esque mask with a scarecrowy crooked smile, or you could say it's a red hood with a jokery-esque smile. There's lots of debate amongst fans on what is the origin and kind of infancy of this drug, and also the inspiration for that artwork that's being used, because that's obviously something that could be pertained to kind of Joker, which a lot of people are saying that this is like a prototype of Smilex or Joker Toxin or something like that, or you could put it to Jonathan Crane's very prototypey kind of Fear Toxin, but that is also recreationally used. Maybe you're meant to get addicted to it in Joker's line of thinking, and this is what I mean. It might be a very prototypey Joker situation where you get hooked to it, but it slowly descends you into madness. Honestly, we don't know how it properly ties, but I have been told that it does indeed tie to the plot, these drops, like the drops. And I think they could be eye-droppy kind of things. Either way, people have theorized maybe that's how they do Darwin Cook's Batman ego trip for Bruce, because if he somehow gets infected with the drops, he could have that kind of crisis moment where the duality of Bruce Wayne / Batman talk to each other, and that'd be really cool to have that inner monologue kind of thing. I could spit forever about this, but all we know is that Gotham citizens, there's kind of a drug little epidemic-y thing going on with these drops. There's a literal logo on it, and you're seeing it on screen, and we just don't know what it properly links to yet. So yeah, that's the context for the drops, just in case anyone doesn't really know what I'm talking about when I talk about that. And I would love for you guys to still offer your theories as to how you think that can tie to things in the Batman. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end the video there. We've had quite a few good questions today, but with many, many more to go, so don't worry, the series will indeed continue. And if you are enjoying it, I implore you to like this video, share it with your Bat family friends. I don't know, I just really appreciate the help, and it just helps the algorithm cater to this channel a little bit more when you engage with it, comment on it. All of those good things is what helps bolster videos like this. And hey, as I said, if you've made it this far in the video, subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, because yeah, why not? And also maybe enable the bell notification so you're always notified of when a video goes up like this one, as of when it goes up. And of course, if you made it this far in a video, prove it by leaving the hashtag in the comment of whatever you were going to comment anywhere in this video. Hashtag Boba's a part of this too. I don't know, it's the intro. It links to the intro. It's good enough. I encourage you to check out the top pinned comment, which is my comment. And if you click on show more, there's a bunch of links to my Twitter, my Discord server. I recommend following me on Twitter and joining the server so you can talk to me personally about this Batman stuff and a bunch of other stuff, by the way, that I talk about on this channel. And other places to support me, such as my Patreon and those patrons and channel members appearing on screen right now. You guys rock and help me do what I do on this channel. So thank you very, very much. And if you want to become like one of those guys who gets a shout out on the video, you can do so by visiting one of those pages. And yeah, that is everything. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you members of the Bat family in the next video. Goodbye.